She was 7 years old, and she knew that adults don't fall like that, not without reason. Not in the aisle of an empty store at 11 o'clock at night. And nobody was helping. The man in leather didn't even know the child, but he recognized the look, the same look he had when no one came. Inside that store, a life was fading away in slow motion, and only a little girl in pink sneakers had noticed. If you believe that children still see what adults ignore, subscribe now. Comment where you're watching from, because this story will stay with you until the end. The night in Coalfield, Tennessee, had that heavy silence that only exists in small towns after 10. The road that cut through Main Street was empty, the lights of the gas stations flickered weakly, and the wind carried dry dust between the peeling brick buildings. The lone rider parked his motorcycle in front of the only market still open, one of those places with tired fluorescent lighting, a cracked glass door, and the smell of reheated coffee. He just wanted water, maybe a packaged sandwich, nothing more. But when he pushed the door open, he heard it, a muffled cry, quiet, like a child trying not to make a sound. She turned her head slowly. In the corner near the canned goods shelves, a little girl stood. Faded pink sneakers, dirty denim shorts, her hair tied back with a red elastic band that had seen better days. She held an empty juice box in her trembling hands. Her eyes were fixed on something in the other hallway. The lone rider walked slowly, without making a sound. He didn't say anything. He simply followed the child's gaze. And then he saw a woman, maybe in her early 30s, too thin. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing work clothes, a cleaning uniform with her name embroidered on it. Maria. She was kneeling on the floor next to the ice cream freezer, her hands resting on the cold floor. She was breathing fast. Very fast. Her eyes blinked slowly, as if she were trying to remember where she was. Confused, disoriented, lost. The little girl took 2 steps toward the lone rider. She stopped. She swallowed hard and whispered, "She's acting strange." He lowered himself to her level. "Do you know her?" The child shook its head. She was getting milk. Then she stopped, and just stood there, still, like she forgot what she was doing. The lone rider looked again. The woman tried to stand, but her knees gave way. She fell sideways, hitting her shoulder on the shelf. Cans of corn rolled across the floor. No one else was in the store besides the 3 of them. The cashier had headphones on, his head down, fiddling with his cell phone, completely oblivious. The little girl tugged at the biker's sleeve. "Is she going to die?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. But I recognized that look. The look of someone who had been holding everything together alone until she couldn't anymore. The lone rider walked slowly toward the woman. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply approached with the calmness of someone who has seen people break down inside before. He knelt beside her. "Hey, are you listening to me?" Her eyes turned toward him, but unfocused. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled. Her breathing remained rapid and irregular, as if her body had forgotten how to breathe properly. He placed his hand on her shoulder. "Slowly, firmly. Breathe with me. Slowly." She blinked. Once, twice, and then, as if someone had turned on a light, her eyes filled with tears. I need to get the milk." Her voice came out broken, hoarse, exhausted. "You need to sit down," he said, helping her lean against the shelf. "Stay here. Don't try to get up yet." She obeyed, but her hands continued to tremble. The little girl approached, still holding the empty juice box. She stood a meter away, observing silently. Her eyes were wide, but not frightened, just attentive. The lone rider looked at her. "Is there water in that refrigerator?" The girl ran, grabbed a bottle and brought it back. He opened it and offered it to the woman. "Drink. Slowly. She held the bottle with both hands, like a child. She took a sip, then another, and then she put the bottle down in her lap and began to cry. It wasn't a loud cry. It was the kind of cry that comes when a person has cried so much alone that they no longer have the strength to make a sound. The lone rider said nothing. He simply stood there, kneeling on the cold floor of an empty market, while a stranger collapsed before him. The little girl sat down on the floor too. She crossed her legs and waited. Nobody spoke for almost a whole minute. Then the woman took a deep breath, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and whispered, I just need to finish the list. I have to finish the list. She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pants pocket. It was a shopping list, written in hurried handwriting: milk, eggs, bread, diapers, medicine. Her hand was shaking so much that the paper was wobbling. The lone rider picked up the paper carefully. He looked at it and felt a tightening in his chest, because he knew exactly what that meant. That wasn't your average shopping list. It was a survival list. And the woman in front of him was at her limit. The little girl tilted her head, looking at the woman with that pure curiosity that only children possess. Do you have a baby? The woman swallowed hard. She nodded yes. 2. And then, as if she had noticed something, she suddenly stood up. She staggered. The lone rider grabbed her arm. Calm down. I need to go, she said, her voice rising. They're alone. I left them alone. I shouldn't have left. She tried to take a step and almost fell again. The lone rider held her tight. Where are they? She pointed vaguely towards the window. No trailer. 2 blocks. I was just going to be quick. But she hadn't been quick, because when the body gives up, it doesn't give any warning. Her name was Maria Salazar. 32 years old. 2 jobs, 2 children. No husband. Lone rider didn't ask, she told, because people on the edge talk. They need to talk. As if putting the words out there was the only thing holding the pieces together. She worked as a cleaner in a hospital, night shift, from 10 in the morning until 6. Then she would take another shift cleaning offices downtown, from 7 until noon. She slept 3 hours. She would wake up, pick up the children from daycare, bathe them, feed them, put them to bed, and it would begin again. All day, non-stop, no rest, without help. The children's father had disappeared 8 months ago, without warning, without explanation. He left her with a rented trailer, 2 mouths to feed, and an overdue electricity bill. She endured it, because mothers endure, until their bodies can't take it anymore. And that night, in the corridor of a seedy market in Coalfield, her body had given up. The lone rider listened to everything in silence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just sat there on the floor beside her, while the little girl in pink sneakers watched with eyes that were too big for her age. When was the last time you ate? He asked. Maria blinked. She tried to remember. I don't know. Yesterday morning. I think so. Did you faint? No, I just got dizzy and confused. I forgot where I was. For a few seconds I forgot. She looked at him, and for the first time, there was real fear in her eyes. Has this happened before? He didn't need to answer. She knew. The little girl stood up suddenly. I'll get her some food. Before anyone could say anything, she ran to the cookie aisle, grabbed a package of cookies, and came back. She offered one to Maria. My mother said that when you're feeling weak, you have to eat, even if you're not hungry. Maria picked up the package, her hands trembling. She opened it. She ate 1 biscuit, then another, as if her body had finally remembered what hunger was. The lone rider looked at the little girl. Where's your mother? At home. I came with my father. He's outside in the car. She pointed to the window. An old sedan was parked across the street. A man was inside, fiddling with his cell phone, completely oblivious. The lone rider took a deep breath. He looked at Maria again. She had stopped eating. She was staring into space with that empty expression of someone who had carried too much weight for too long. "You can't go home like this," he said. "I need to. The children, you're going to faint in the middle of the street. Or worse." She closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. "So what do I do?" Her voice came out in a broken whisper. "What do I do if I can't anymore?" And that was the question she had been avoiding asking for months. Because if she admitted she couldn't do it, everything would fall apart. The lone rider was silent for a moment. Then he stood up. "You're going to tell me where the trailer is. I'll go get the kids. And you'll go to the hospital." "No, I don't have money for... I'm not asking for opinions." He extended his hand. Maria looked at his hand, then at his face. And she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Someone who wasn't going away. But before she could answer, the market door opened, and someone came in. The man who entered didn't seem dangerous at first glance. Maybe 40 years old, worn denim jacket. John Deere cap pulled forward, hands in his pockets. But the lone rider saw, the way he looked at Maria, it wasn't a look of concern, it was a look of ownership, of possession. Maria saw it too, and she froze. The man walked slowly towards them, with the kind of calm that comes before the storm. "Maria," he said. His voice was drawn out, almost gentle, but it wasn't. "I thought I told you not to go out at night." She didn't answer. She just lowered her head. The lone rider stood up slowly. He positioned himself between the two. "She's not doing well. She needs help." The man looked at him. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Who are you?" "Nobody. I was just passing by." "So it keeps passing by." The tone changed. It became cold, direct. The little girl took a step back, but she didn't leave. She stayed there watching. Maria tried to get up. "I'm fine, Danny. I just got dizzy. I'm going home now." "You should have stayed home from the beginning," Danny interrupted. "I told you, the children can't be left alone. And you go out, make a scene at the supermarket, draw attention to yourself." "She's not being dramatic," Lone Rider interrupted. "She's sick." Danny turned to him. The smile vanished. "I didn't ask for your opinion, biker." Silence. Tense. The kind of silence where any wrong move turns into a spark. Maria placed her hand on the Lone Rider's arm. Weak, trembling. "Let him. Please, I'll go with him. You're not going anywhere with him." The biker's voice came out calm, but firm. Danny stepped forward. "You don't know anything. You don't know who I am. You don't know who she is. And you don't know what will happen if you keep meddling where you weren't invited." The Lone Rider didn't move. "I know enough." "Really?" Danny tilted his head. "So you know I'm her landlord? You know the trailer she lives in is mine? You know I let her be late on rent because I'm nice?" He took another step. "And you know that if she disrespects me, I can kick her and those kids out on the street tomorrow?" Maria began to cry. Softly, without sound, the little girl squeezed the empty juice box in her hands until it was crushed. The Lone Rider took a deep breath. Slowly. He'd seen this before. He knew the script. He knew the type. Men like Danny don't just hit right away. They control. They threaten. They imprison. They isolate. And when the victim has no way out, that's when they destroy them. "How much does she owe you?" the biker asked. Danny laughed. A low laugh. Bitter. "This isn't about money, my friend." And it was in that sentence that everything became clear, because it wasn't about the rent. It had never been that way. It was about power. about having someone dependent on her, about knowing she had nowhere to run. Maria held Danny's arm. I'll go now, I promise. Just please don't do anything to the children. The children are fine, as long as you do what you should. He pulled her arm, firmly, abruptly. Maria staggered. The lone rider grabbed Danny's wrist, let her go. The entire store seemed to stop breathing. The cashier finally took off his headphones. He looked and froze. The little girl took another step back, but her eyes never left Maria. Danny looked at his wrist, then at the biker's face. You just made a serious mistake. It's not the first time. And then Danny pulled something out of his pocket. It wasn't a weapon, it was a cell phone. He dialed. Someone answered on the other end. It's Danny. I need you to come to the main market. Now, we have a problem. He hung up. He smiled. You have 3 minutes to get out of my sight, or this will end badly, for you and for her. The lone rider wouldn't let go of his wrist, and for the first time, Mary raised her head, and she looked at him, afraid, but also with something more. Hope, small, fragile, but still alive. The lone rider knew he had seconds to decide. If he let Danny go, Maria would go back to hell. If he didn't let her go, everything would get worse. For him, for her, and for the children who were alone in a trailer waiting for their mother to return. He looked into Maria's eyes. He saw fear, exhaustion, and resignation. The same resignation he had seen in himself years before. When I still believed I had no choice, back when I still thought that enduring it was the only way out. He released Danny's wrist, but he didn't move out of the way. You're going to let her go to the hospital, he said, his voice low. After that, she can decide what to do. Danny laughed. A short, dry laugh. She already decided. It was months ago. Maria lowered her head again. Her hands were trembling so much that she had to cross her arms to hide them. The little girl approached the lone rider. She stopped beside him. She looked up. You're not going to let him hurt her, are you? The question came out quietly, but it was clear, and it hurt, because he didn't know if he could promise that. Before he could answer, the market door opened again. 2 men entered, both wearing leather jackets, chains hanging from their pockets, tattoos climbing up their necks, empty stares. Danny smiled. These are my cousins. They're going to help resolve our situation. The 2 positioned themselves, one on each side of Danny, blocking the exit. The cashier slowly raised his hands and retreated back into the warehouse. He closed the door behind him. Now it was just them. Maria began to tremble more violently, not from cold, from panic. Danny, please, I'll do whatever you want, just don't do it here, not in front of her. She looked at the little girl, but the girl didn't move. She stood planted beside the biker, as if she had roots. One of the cousins stepped forward. You heard Danny. Get out of here. The lone rider took a deep breath. He could leave. Technically, he could go away, call the police from a distance, let the system handle it. But he knew how it would end. The police arrived. They filed a report. Maria lied. She said everything was fine. Danny smiled. Everyone left. And the next day, Maria and the children disappeared. He had seen this story before. I wasn't going to watch it again. I'm not going anywhere, he said. The second cousin took something out of his pocket. A wrench, heavy, rusty. Then we'll take you out. But before anyone could move, the little girl did something unexpected. She pulled her cell phone out of her pocket, small, pink, with unicorn stickers, and he pressed a button. A man's voice came from the other end of the line. Hi, honey. Have you finished? Choosing your ice cream yet? Dad, she said, her voice firm. There are some men in here, and they're scaring a young woman. Silence on the other end. And then, stay where you are. I'm coming. She hung up. She looked at Danny. "My father is a sheriff." The phrase landed like a bombshell. Danny blinked. He looked at his cousins, then at the door. Outside, the man in the sedan had already gotten out of the car and was crossing the street. Tall, long shoulders, distinctive waist. The cousins retreated. Danny clenched his teeth. "This doesn't end here," he pointed at Maria. "You still owe me, and you're going to pay. One way or another." He left. His cousins followed him, quickly, before the sheriff arrived. Maria collapsed, on her knees, on the floor, sobbing. The lone rider knelt beside her. He placed his hand on her shoulder. "It's over. For now." But he knew it wasn't over. Danny was coming back. And next time, it would be worse. The door opened. The sheriff entered. He looked at the scene, the daughter, the biker, the woman on the ground. "Can someone explain to me what's going on here?" The little girl looked at her father, then at the lone rider, and he said, "He saved her." The sheriff looked at the biker. "That is true." The lone rider did not respond, because saving someone is not a one-time act. It's a choice that keeps coming back, and he still didn't know if he would be able to do it again. The sheriff's name was Tom Calloway, 48 years old, 26 on duty. Tired eyes that had seen good people do bad things, and bad people pretend to be good for too long to be surprised by anything. But when he looked at Maria Salazar trembling on the cold floor of that market, something inside him stirred, because he recognized it. The same exhaustion he saw in his ex-wife before she left. The same resignation he saw in his sister before she gave up on everything. The same emptiness felt by someone who carries the weight of the world alone until their bones crack. "Do you need an ambulance?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Maria shook her head. "Too fast. No, I just need to go home. The children are fine," the lone rider interrupted. "I'll go get them. You go to the hospital." "I can't." "It can, and it will." The sheriff looked at the biker. He studied him for a moment. The leather jacket, the scars on his hands, the way he stood, alert, ready. He was no ordinary man. "Who are you?" Tom asked. "Nobody. I was just passing by." "It does not seem." Lone Rider did not respond. The little girl tugged at her father's sleeve. "He helped Dad. That man was going to hurt her." "Which man?" "Danny. He said he owned her trailer and that he was going to throw her out on the street." Tom closed his eyes. He sighed. "Danny Pritchard." "Do you know him?" the biker asked. "Everyone knows him. Old Pritchard's son, owner of half the trailers in this town, and known for collecting money in creative ways." "Creative how?" Tom looked at Maria, then back at the biker. "The kind that never leaves enough evidence for me to arrest." Silence. Heavy. Maria wiped her face. She tried to stand up. The lone rider helped her. "I'm going home," she said, her voice weak. "Not until you've been examined," Tom insisted. "I have no way to pay. I didn't ask for your opinion." He grabbed the radio from his waist. "Dispatch. I need an ambulance at the main market. Woman showing signs of severe exhaustion and possible dehydration." Maria started, crying again. "My children, they're going to think I abandoned them." "They won't think any of that," the lone rider said. "Because I'm going there. I'm going to bring them to the hospital, and I'll stay until you're okay." She looked at him, confused, scared. "Why? You don't even know me. I don't need to know." And it was true, because he had already been the child waiting for someone who never returned. And he vowed that he would never let another child feel that way if he could prevent it. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. 2 paramedics got out. They asked the routine questions. They measured her blood pressure, her glucose level. They checked her eyes. "When was the last time you ate properly?" one of them asked. Maria didn't know the answer. They exchanged glances, and they placed her on the stretcher. We're taking her to County General. Probable severe dehydration, maybe hypoglycemia. Maria held the lone rider's hand. Promise. Promise you'll take care of them. I promise. She was taken away. The sheriff looked at the biker. Trailer address? I don't know. Tom sighed. He looked at his daughter. Do you know where she lives, Lily? The little girl shook her head. But I heard her talking, 2 blocks from here. There's only one trailer park in that direction, Tom said. Cedar Pines. Danny owns it. He looked at the lone rider. Are you sure you want to do this? I have. Because if Danny finds out you went there, he already knows I got involved. Tom was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll go with you, just to be sure. It is not necessary. I didn't ask for an opinion. The two stared at each other, and then Tom smiled. Small, tired. You remind me of someone. Who? Me. 20 years ago, before I learned that not everyone can be saved. The lone rider did not respond, because he hadn't learned that yet, and I hoped I would never learn. They left the market. The little girl held her father's hand, and the 3 of them headed towards Cedar Pines Mobile Home Park, where 2 children were waiting for their mother to return. Without knowing that everything had changed, Cedar Pines had nothing to do with pine trees. Not even cedar. It was just a pretty name for an ugly place. 22 trailers lined up on a dirt lot, half of them with broken windows patched up with duct tape. Children playing barefoot even though it was almost midnight. A skinny dog tied to a chain that was too short. Maria's trailer was number 17. Small, peeling white, a dim light on inside. The lone rider parked his motorcycle. Tom stopped his car next to it. Before they got off, the biker saw something. 3 motorcycles, parked in the trailer next door. Large, chrome-plated, well-maintained. These weren't weekend motorcycles. These were motorcycles belonging to people who live on the road. Tom saw it too. Interesting, he murmured. Danny never rents to motorcycle clubs. Perhaps they are not tenants. So what? The lone rider didn't answer, but a bad feeling was growing in his chest. They got out. They walked to the door of Maria's trailer. Before they could knock, the door opened. A little girl appeared, maybe 5 years old, dark hair, enormous eyes, holding a battered teddy bear. Where's Mommy? She asked. Her voice was thin and frightened. Behind her, an even smaller little boy, maybe 3 years old, in a diaper, pacifier in his mouth, crying softly. The lone rider knelt down. Your mother had to go to the hospital. But everything's fine. She sent us to pick you up. The girl looked at him, then at the sheriff, then at Lily, who was behind her father. Who are you? I am a friend. You can call me Ryder. Ryder is not a name. This is all I have. She hesitated. Then she looked at her little brother. He was still crying. He's hungry. Mom forgot to give him dinner. I hadn't forgotten. I probably didn't have anything to give. Tom entered the trailer. He looked around. Small, clean, but empty. The refrigerator was almost empty. The cupboard had 2 packets of instant noodles, nothing else. He went back to the door. He looked at the lone rider. I'm going to call social services. No. The word came out firmly. Tom frowned. They need proper care. They need their mother. And if you call, they'll take those children away from her, and she'll never have the strength to recover. And what do you suggest? Take them to the hospital. Let them stay with their mother while she recovers. We'll figure it out. Later. Tom remained silent, weighing things up. And then he waved. Okay. But if something goes wrong, it's not going to work. But before they could leave, the 3 men on the motorcycles appeared. They got out of the trailer next door. Slowly, without rushing. Everyone is wearing leather vests. Patch on the back, Iron Reckoning MC. Lone Rider recognized them. Not personally, but he knew the club, small, independent, not affiliated with any large organization. Known for two types of work, cargo, escort, and debt collection. The man in front was older, maybe 50, gray hair tied in a ponytail, thick beard, eyes that had seen violence and no longer blinked at her. He stopped 3 meters away. Problem, Sheriff? No, just looking for 2 children. Daughters of Mary? Yes. The man looked at the lone rider. He studied the jacket, the posture, the motorcycle. Are you walking alone? Always. The man nodded, respectfully. His name is Boone, president of the reckoning. Rider. Boone looked at the children, then back to the lone rider. I heard there was a commotion at the market. Danny was involved. News travels fast in a small town. You heard right. Boone crossed his arms. Danny called us. He said there was a motorcyclist causing trouble. He asked for help to solve it. Silence. Heavy. The sheriff put his hand on his gun, but Boone shook his head. We don't work for Danny. We work for those who deserve it. And after what we heard about how he treats his tenants, he spat. On the ground. He doesn't deserve a damn thing. The lone rider breathed a sigh of relief. Boone stepped forward. You're going to need help, because Danny isn't going to let this go. And when he comes back, he's bringing people. Lots of people. I'll handle this myself. It is not necessary. Boone extended his hand. We're offering it. The lone rider looked at his hand, then at the other 2 bikers, and then he squeezed. Accepted, because sometimes walking alone isn't a sign of strength, it's just loneliness. County General Hospital was small, 20 beds, 2 doctors on duty, overworked nurses rushing between patients, the smell of disinfectant mixed with stale coffee. Maria was in bed 6, IV drip, eyes closed, breathing finally stable. The children were sitting beside the bed. The girl was holding her mother's hand. The boy was asleep in her lap, his pacifier lying on the floor. The doctor left the room and went to the lone rider, who was waiting in the hallway with Boone and Tom. She'll be fine, the doctor said. But that was a close call. A few more hours and she would have fainted in the street, or worse. What's wrong with her? Tom asked. Extreme exhaustion, severe dehydration, anemia, hypoglycemia, and signs of chronic stress affecting her nervous system. The doctor looked at them. How long has she been living like this? Months, the lone rider replied. The doctor shook his head. The human body can endure a lot, but it can't endure everything. If she continues at this rate, she's going to have a complete collapse, or a stroke. She's 32 years old, but her body is functioning as if she was 60. Silence. Tom rubbed his face. How long does she need to stay here? At least 48 hours. To rehydrate, to stabilize, and to ensure there's nothing more serious. And the children. They can stay, as long as they don't get in the way. They went back to the room. Maria was awake, looking at the children with that look only a mother has. A mixture of love and guilt. When he saw the lone rider, his eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded. He didn't say anything, because words didn't change anything. But then the hospital door opened, and Danny went in. I was not alone. 6 men behind him, all dressed the same, cheap leather jackets, chains, blank expressions. They weren't real motorcyclists, they were thugs. Tom stood up. He put his hand on the gun. Danny, you shouldn't be here. I came to visit my tenant. I have the right to do so. No, it doesn't have one. Danny smiled. He looked at the lone rider. And you? Still here? Yet. Interesting, because I came to deliver a message. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, crumpled, with an official stamp. Eviction, effective in 72 hours. Maria Salazar and her dependents must vacate trailer number 17 immediately. Maria let out a muffled sound. almost a scream. "You can't." "I can." And I did. Tom picked up the paper. He read, "It," and he clenched his teeth. "That's great, absolutely. She's 3 months behind on rent. I have every right to do so." He looked at Maria. "But I'm reasonable. If you want to renegotiate, we can talk. In private." The tone was clear, disgusting. Lone Rider took a step forward. Boone grabbed him by the arm. "Calm down." But Danny saw, and smiled even more. "Oh, the hero wants to play? Then let's play." He pointed at the henchmen. "These guys here are going to make sure nobody goes back to the trailer. And if anyone tries, well, accidents happen." Tom pulled out his gun. "That's a threat." "No, it's a warning." Danny turned around. He started to leave, but he stopped at the door. He looked back. "Oh, and Ryder, we'll see each other soon, I promise." He left. The henchmen too. The hospital fell silent again. But it was not a peaceful silence. It was silent before the war. Maria started to cry. Not a quiet cry this time. A loud cry. Desperate. "I have nowhere to go. I have no money. I have nothing. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with them?" She pointed to her children, and the Lone Rider saw something break inside her. The last glimmer of hope. Shattering. Boone looked at him. "What do you want to do?" The Lone Rider remained silent for a long moment. Then he replied, "This is what needs to be done." And everyone knew what that meant, because from that moment on there was no turning back. 72 hours, 3 days to find a place, a better job, a solution. But Maria was not 3 days old. She barely had the strength to stand. The Lone Rider spent the night in the hospital parking lot, sitting on his motorcycle, thinking, calculating. Boone and the other 2 members of Reckoning did the same. 3 motorcycles parked in a circle, a lit cigarette, cold coffee, silence. Tom went home. He returned the next day with his daughter. Lily brought drawings she had made for Maria's children, flowers, butterflies, a blue sky that didn't exist in Coalfield. But for the next 3 days, nothing changed. Maria was discharged on the 2nd day. She left the hospital still weak, still trembling, but alive. The children held her hand tightly, as if they sensed that everything was about to fall apart. The Lone Rider took them back to the trailer. But when they arrived, Maria's belongings were already in the street. Boxes, garbage bags, scattered clothes, the girl's teddy bear thrown in the mud. The trailer door was locked, with a new padlock, and Danny was there, sitting in a garden chair, smiling. "The deadline has passed," he said. "We warned you." Maria fell to her knees, in front of the children, in front of everyone, and he shouted. It wasn't a cry of anger. It was a cry of defeat, the sound of someone who carried everything alone until there was nothing left. The girl started to cry. The boy did too, loudly, desperately. The Lone Rider looked at Danny, then at the henchmen surrounding him, 6 of them, armed, ready. He looked at Boone, who shook his head. It wouldn't work. Not there, not with the children around. Tom was on the radio calling for backup, but everyone knew that by the time the police arrived, it would be too late, because Danny had the paperwork. He had witnesses. He had everything in order on paper. And on paper he was right. Maria tried to stand up. She staggered. She fell again. And then he whispered something that no one expected. "I'll go. I'll do what you want. Just, please, let my children have a roof over their heads." Danny stood up. He walked over to her. He crouched down, and he whispered something in her ear, something that no one else has heard. But everyone saw the reaction. Maria closed her eyes. She clenched her fists, and he waved. "Try." Lone Rider took a step forward. Boone held him. "No, I won't let it." You're gonna make things worse for her and for her children. But Lone Rider couldn't move because I was seeing the same scene I had seen when I was a child, when his mother agreed to stay with a man who beat her because it was that or the streets, and he swore he would never let that happen again. But it was happening in front of him, and he couldn't do anything. Maria took the children by the hand. She looked at the scattered boxes, and he started putting things together, slowly, breaking down from the inside with every movement. Danny went back to his chair. He lit a cigarette, and she smiled, because he had won. He always won, because that's how the system was structured. For people like him, it's always good to win, and people like Maria always lose. The Lone Rider turned his back, not because he wanted to, but because if he stayed, he would do something irreversible. He got on the motorcycle. Boone climbed onto his own, and the four bikers slowly exited Cedar Pines, leaving Maria to pick up the pieces of her life in the middle of the street, while the children cried and Danny smoked. 3 kilometers later, the Lone Rider stopped. He got off the motorcycle, and he shouted, "Hi, for no one, for everyone, for yourself," because he had failed. Again. Boone stopped beside him. He said nothing. He just stayed there, until the scream turns to silence, and silence becomes a decision. "We'll be back," the Lone Rider said, "tonight." And what does it do? What we should have done from the beginning. Boone remained silent. Then he nodded. "Okay, but it has to be done the right way. There's no right way. You just have to do it." And for the first time in 3 days, there was fire in his eyes again. Because failing once hurts, but giving up kills. 10 o'clock at night. Cedar Pines was silent. Most of the trailers had their lights off. Children were asleep. Exhausted adults were trying to forget yet another day. But in trailer number 9, the one Danny used as an office, the lights were still on. Voices inside. Laughter. Bottles clinking on the table. Outside, hidden in the shadows, the Lone Rider watched. Boone was beside him. The other 2 Reckoning members were positioned at strategic points, radios tuned to the private channel. Silent. Ready. "How many do you count?" Boone whispered. 6 inside, 2 patrolling, plus Danny. "Weapons?" "At least 3 that I saw." Boone took a deep breath. "This could go very wrong. It will work. So why are we doing this?" The Lone Rider didn't answer immediately. He just looked at trailer number 17, where Maria and the children were. A dim light was on. Shadows were moving inside. She had stayed because I had no choice, and that was wrong on every level. "Because if we don't do it," he finally said, "nobody will." Boone nodded. "Okay, what's the plan?" "Simple. We'll get her out of here, today." "And then what?" "We'll figure it out later." It wasn't a plan. It was a shot in the dark. But sometimes it was all that could be done. The Lone Rider was about to move when his cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. And then, "Please. Help me." It was Maria's voice, low, trembling, desperate. "Maria." He locked the children in the room, and he said that if I try to leave, he will. Her voice broke. The Lone Rider gripped his cell phone tightly. "Where are you?" "In the trailer. But he's here. He won't leave. And I don't know what to do." Heavy breathing, real fear. "Hold on tight. I'll get you out of there." "No, he's going to kill you. He said that if you show up." "It doesn't matter what he said. I'm going." He hung up. He looked at Boone. "Change of plans. She's in danger. Now." Boone waved to the other 2. They approached. "What do you need?" "Distraction. Big. Noisy." One of the bikers, a big guy named Tuck, smiled. "I have an idea." 5 minutes later, trailer number 9 burst into flames. Not literally, but almost. Tuck had thrown 3 bottles of fuel overboard and lit a makeshift fuse. Black smoke rose into the sky. The fire alarm went off. All of Danny's henchmen ran out, screaming, trying to pass out. Danny too. And that's when the lone rider made its move. Fast, silent. He entered trailer 17 through the back door. Maria was sitting on the floor. Her face was swollen. Her eyes were red. You came. I always come. He helped her to get up. Where are the children? Back room. The door is locked. He went over there. He kicked the door, just once. The lock snapped shut. The two children were huddled in the corner, crying. When they saw the rider, the girl ran and threw herself into his arms. Get us out of here, please. He picked her up in his arms. The boy did too, and he left through the front door, but Danny was waiting, with a gun in his hand. I knew it, he said. I knew you were going to try something. He pointed the gun at Ryder's chest. Let them go. The lone rider didn't move. No, I'll shoot. I swear I'll shoot, then shoot. Silence. Tense. Danny was trembling. The gun was swinging. You don't understand. She owes me. She doesn't owe you. A damn thing. The voice came from behind Danny. Tom Calloway, gun in hand, badge gleaming in the light of the fire. Put the gun down, Danny, now. Danny looked back, then back at the rider, and he realized I had lost. He lowered his weapon. Tom stepped forward. He handcuffed him. You're under arrest. Threats with a firearm, false imprisonment, extortion, and everything else I can add. Danny couldn't resist. She just looked at Maria, and he whispered, You'll regret this. But she wasn't going. Because for the first time in months, she was able to breathe. The Caulfield police station was small. 2 cells, 1 desk, an old computer that took 3 minutes to boot up. Danny was placed in cell 1, still silent, still with that empty look of someone who knows the game is over but refuses to accept it. Tom slammed the door shut. He turned to Lone Rider. You're lucky I arrived in time. I know. If you had shot him, I wasn't going to shoot. I've never carried a gun. Tom blinked. Serious? Serious. The sheriff remained silent. Then he shook his head. You're crazy. Perhaps. But it wasn't madness. It was a choice. Because violence begets violence. And he had already seen it destroy too many people. Maria was sitting outside. The children were on her lap, a blanket over them. Lily was beside them, offering them a juice box. The lone rider got out. He sat down next to Maria. She looked at him. Red eyes, scarred face. But for the first time, something was different. Relief. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how I'm going to repay you. You don't need to pay anything. But I have nowhere to stay. I have no money. We'll sort it out. Boone approached, followed by Tuck and the other biker, a skinny guy named Jace. We talked, Boone said. The club has a house, former headquarters. It's not big, but it has 2 bedrooms, working bathroom, kitchen. He looked at Maria. You can stay there, for as long as you need. No rent, no charges. Maria blinked, confused. Why? Why? Because we've been where you are before, and someone helped us when we needed it. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were feelings she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Tom returned from the police station. Danny will be held for at least 72 hours. After that, there will be a hearing. If all goes well, he'll be in jail for a few months, maybe longer. He looked at Maria. But you'll have to testify. Tell. Everything. Hide nothing. Maria lowered her head. I'm scared, I know, but if you don't do it, he'll leave and come back. She took a deep breath. She looked at her children, and he waved. I make. Tom smiled. Small. Tired. Good. He looked at the lone rider. And you? Are you going to stay? The biker looked at the road, the motorcycle, the open night. It was always easy to leave, but this time, something was holding it back. For now. Tom nodded. Okay, because I need help processing all of this. And you're the key witness. Maria stood up, slowly, still weak, but she was on her feet. He looked at Lone Rider, then at Boone, then at Tom. I don't know how to thank you. You saved us. The Lone Rider shook his head. You saved yourself. We just lent a hand. But she knew that wasn't true, because if she were alone, she would have fallen, and I wouldn't have gotten up. Boone helped Maria carry the children to his pickup truck. They were going straight home from the club. Before going inside, Maria looked back at the Lone Rider, and he whispered, You're going to disappear again, aren't you? He didn't answer, because I didn't know. She smiled, sad, but grateful. Thank you for showing up when I needed you most. And he got into the car. Boone started the car, and they drove away. The Lone Rider stood still in the middle of the street, alone, as always. Tom approached. You did a good thing today. I only did what had to be done. Even so, not everyone would do that. Silence. Tom extended his hand. If you need anything at all, call me. The Lone Rider shook his hand. It cost, and then he got on the motorcycle. He started the engine, and he stayed there, still, looking at the road, for freedom, for solitude. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go. 3 weeks later, the Lone Rider was still in Coalfield. He hadn't planned to stay, but every time he tried to leave, something pulled him back. Maria got a new job, just one shift, cleaning at a law office. It didn't pay much, but it paid enough. The children were at school. The girl had stopped crying at night. The boy had started smiling again. The clubhouse wasn't perfect, but it was safe, and that was all. Danny was convicted. 6 months in prison, plus 3 years of probation. He lost his trailers. He lost everything. And nobody felt sorry for them. Lone Rider would stop by Maria's house sometimes, just to see if everything was all right. She always offered him coffee. He always accepted. They didn't talk much, they didn't need to. One of those days the girl asked, Are you leaving? He looked at her, at the teddy bear she was now holding clean and patched up. One day. When you're sure you're both okay. She thought for a moment, what if we never truly get along? The question hurt, because she was too honest. You're going to stay, he said, because your mother is strong, and so are you. The girl smiled, small, but real, and he went back to playing. Maria appeared at the door, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She likes you. I know. You're good with her. With them. Silence. Have you ever had children? Maria asked. He shook his head. No. I never wanted to. It's too complicated. Yes, but it's worth it. She watched her children playing in the yard, that small yard with burnt grass and surrounded by old planks. But it was theirs, and that was enough. Thank you, she said again, for everything. You already said. That, I know, but I never tire of saying it. She smiled, and for the first time since he met her, the smile reached his eyes. The Lone Rider finished his coffee. He stood up. I need to go. Today? Today. Maria nodded. She didn't argue. She simply accompanied him to the motorcycle. Before starting the engine, he stopped. He took something out of his pocket. A card, with a number written on it by hand. If you need anything, call. Are you coming back? If you need me, I'll come back. And it was true. Because he wasn't leaving forever, I was just continuing on. He started the motorcycle. The engine roared. The children ran to the fence. They waved. Maria too. And the Lone Rider departed, slowly, down Main Street, passing the market where it all began. The little girl in pink sneakers, Lily, was there, with her father, buying ice cream. When she saw the motorcycle, she waved. He waved back, and he continued, to the road, on to the next city, next call, because the Lone Rider didn't save everyone. but he saved those he could. And sometimes that was enough. Coalfield was left behind, small, forgotten, just another dot on the map. But for Maria, for the children, for Lily, and for everyone who saw what happened in those 3 weeks, Coalfield would never be just another town. It was the place where someone appeared when no one else was looking. And it made all the difference. Even though nobody ever knew his name. Even if he never came back. The road stretched out ahead. Empty, silent, and the lone rider sped off. Because the end of one story is just the beginning of another, and somewhere someone needed help, and he was going to be there, always, until you can't anymore. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe, because there's more to come. And next time, it might be even more intense. Click on the next video now. She was 9 years old, and she asked him to kill her own father. A child makes an impossible request, and the biker must decide if there is justice beyond the law.